That's what I started to pray for, by the way, is lay guilt on people
on
blind.
those.
Because common sense and reasoning doesn't work anymore.
They were probably thinking they could kill the power to any security system that you might have.
Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah, that's probably what they were doing. Anyway, did anyone watch the live streaming last night for The Chosen? Okay, they had a special live streaming last night with a special announcement. Okay, and I thought that it was going to be that they had season 3 completely funded, but that wasn't it. What they have done is they have managed, under everyone's noses, to be able to film a Christmas special of The Chosen. And it's going to be a takeoff of the previous Christmas story that they had done about the birth of Jesus. But it's going to be that, plus they're going to have a lot of singing groups that are going to be singing as a part of that. Now, it's not going to be on the app. It's not going to be on YouTube. It's going to be in the theaters. It's going to be December the 1st and the 2nd. I don't know whether you've heard of it before, but there's an outfit called Fathom that basically leases out theaters for special events, you know, sort of like this. But it's called Christmas with the Chosen, the Messengers. Okay? And last night it was announced. Today I noticed on their Facebook page that they have set new records for the sale of tickets, pre-sale of tickets for this event through Fathom, to the point that they've had to add additional showings.
1,100 theaters.
1,100 theaters across the United States. And it's only going to be shown in the United States. And Dallas apologized to people outside the United States, but it will be available later on through the normal channels, the app, and through YouTube. But this is a special event for December the 1st and 2nd. I did manage to capture a few tickets on that last night. Luckily, I had to do it several times because they were going fast. But I was able to capture 4 tickets for that. We have some family that's coming in and during that week, and I thought it'd be a great thing for us to take them with us to the theater. But having said that, if you want tickets for that, there is a special website to go to get those, and it's thechosen.tv. That's The Chosen, all one word. thechosen.tv/ Christmas.
What theater is around here is it?
The closest one is Lake Wales at the Regal Cinema 12 at the Lake Wales Mall.
Is that Wednesday?
That is, yeah, so Wednesday and Thursday night. So we opted for Thursday night instead of Wednesday. So, but, and it is, again, it's normal theater prices for, you know, a first run movie. You know, it's $16.50 a ticket. So, but that's what theater tickets are. If you haven't been to see a movie lately, that's what they're going for. On the,
for popcorn.
yeah, you'll spend way more than that for popcorn. Yeah, the tickets are your cheapest purchase. But anyway, if you're interested in that, you know, you'll probably need to go online this evening and do that. Now, one of the things that I asked for one of the previous times was everyone's phone number so I could text you, or an email address. If you can do that, see, I could have sent out this information right away, but I didn't have all of that information. But anyway, no.
Well, it's laying back here, but it's not now.
Anyway, maybe we can get a sheet of paper. You can do that as everybody leaves tonight. That way, any of these announcements like this, I can get information out to you rapidly so that it'll happen. But I think that's fabulous that here it's a Christian movie based on the life of Jesus, and it sold out just like that, you know, on 1,100 theaters, so that they're having to add additional showings already. It's just phenomenal. And a portion of the ticket sales goes to funding the Chosen series. So that's what's happening with that. So that I have a feeling that we will see an announcement very soon that season 3 is completely funded. They're narrowing in on it. Beth, you look like you've got a question.
No, I was just going to say that some of the proceeds from these tickets is going towards funding that 3rd season, I believe, too. We're passing a piece of paper around.
Oh, all right. Very good, very good. Very good. Okay, just real quickly, this is my poster collection that I got. Anyway, you saw Lilith, who now goes by Mary in this episode, okay? This is on over here where my hand is. That was what she looked like in the first episode. And of course, the other picture is what she looked like in the episode 2, after she had been redeemed and Jesus had healed her and redeemed her in episode 1. Now, we also have, of course you remember Nicodemus, that's the top one there. And the bottom picture there is a picture of Simon and his brother Andrew. Okay, you recognize those from the series as well. Just so that, just refresh it in your mind who the characters are. And of course, Nicodemus, when he met Mary, they were walking and he was questioning her about, you know, he thought it was something that he had done and that it was the reason that she was healed. And that was not the case, of course. And did you notice the surprise on Nicodemus' face when she told him that he had nothing to do with it? It was nothing he had done. See what else I have.
Surprised when the other people told him it was what he did.
Okay. And of course, there was Matthew and his dog. Okay, that's a picture of Matthew and his dog. That dog looked a little evil in the show, but he's pretty there. Nice looking, right in the middle. I love Matthew's mannerisms. In fact, we'll talk about that a little.
He's awfully young. I always pictured him as being
A little older.
a little older, yeah.
A little more seasoned.
Yeah.
Which he will be by the time this thing is over.
Yeah, by the time it's over. And of course, here, two things. Matthew's handler and Matthew there. And of course, the bottom picture is the picture of Jesus when he called Mary by name and he healed her. You see that around here too? Anyway, that's that one. And one of these, it's a little premature showing you, but anyway, pay no attention to the one over here on the side closest to me, but I wanted you to see the picture of Matthew at his tax collection booth.
Looks like he's in jail.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to see that one.
Looks like he's contemplating things, doesn't it? But anyway, this one over here was
locked up.
this one over here was Nicodemus when he met Jesus by night. So that's coming up. But anyway, those just a reminder of the characters that were in the episode that we just saw. And this episode was about Shabbat, and of course that is the Jewish celebration of Saturn. And I found it very interesting, the comparison between the different celebrations that were going on, between the one that Mary had, the one that Matthew thought he was going to be able to go to, and then the one that Nicodemus was at. I think those are very sharp contrasts between those different ones. I'm going to have to put my glasses on because I got something going on with my contact lens. But you know, the whole concept of Sabbath is something that is, I think, is good for us because all of us are going, what, 100 miles an hour all the time, going different directions, doing this, doing that, and just being able to slow down and enjoy or be able to prepare ourselves for worship. That is something that a lot of times is difficult for us to do because we come in, we rush in to church, and we're there and we're going wide open and trying to unwind and get in the right frame of mind to be able to enter into worship. Sometimes it's difficult. So this whole concept is really one that I think is good because too often we measure the value of our days that we have by how much we can accomplish in that day. I know it gives you a good feeling at the end of the day, oh, look at everything that I've got done. But sometimes we just need to slow down just a little bit.
I'll give you a good example. I thought I had plenty of time to, come, we ate, we worked, ate. So I have time to let the dogs out before we go. The cat's getting ready to take her. I let them out, they did their business. All of a sudden, Gabriella's dog takes off. Won't come back. Now I'm running out. She's looking for her little toy to squeak. So I'm running late. I end up running out. Left my papers at home. But that's the whole thing. You're so busy, and when you think you have a couple of extra minutes before you go, you don't have it.
Well, and too many times during the day we're going and rushing and doing these things like that, so that at night when we get home, that's when we start thinking about rest. Sometimes not even then, because then we got a whole list of things. Well, I got to get this done on the computer. I've got to schedule this. I've got to make this phone call. All kinds of different things going on like that. So
Don't forget about tomorrow.
yeah, that whole list of things that we've got to get done for tomorrow. The word Shabbat, of course, is a Hebrew translation of the word Sabbath, which means to cease from work, because it tells us in the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in the 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and He made it holy. So the Sabbath was a day of the whole community of the Jewish people, and we saw that. There were different groups that gathered together to participate in the Sabbath. They would have the meal that evening, and then, of course, the next day was a day of rest. So, but we see that it was celebrated in a number of different ways. God built this into us to be able to give the people the time to be able to relax and rest from their normal day-to-day things. And by looking at everything that goes on in the series, life wasn't very easy back then. It was a very difficult process. And the one lady, remember the comment that she made to Mary? is that you better get started because it may take you all afternoon to get everything done in preparation for the Sabbath. So,
We had an interesting dichotomy of the Sabbath at our first full-time ministry, because it was in south central Kentucky, out in the country, down the Green River Reservoir. So there really wasn't a whole lot happening. We lived on a major road down there, Highway 70, which the speed limit was 70. So that was right in front of our house. But the church looked at the Sabbath as being an old, founded Christian church, Church of Christ Restoration Movement, a Christian church, as take the Sabbath off, go home. A lot of people were farmers, take the day off, go home, rest, get ready for the next week. Except for the preacher. And the preacher was supposed to, instead of taking the day off, you could go to lunch, take the family, go to lunch, but come back, drop them off, and then go visiting. And they didn't realize that going out and going visiting within the community or within just the church people, how much work actually you put into going out and how weary that can get. One day we had a revival, one week we had a revival coming up, and we started revivals on Sunday night. They run through either the following Friday or just through Wednesday, depending on how soon they wanted it over with. And Sunday afternoon, it was beautiful, beautiful Sunday. Sunday afternoon, I looked out at the grass. Well, whoever was going to cut the grass didn't get there to cut the grass. So I got the church lawnmower out and fired up that Aaron's lawnmower, and I'm going with a 32-inch cut, and I'm going through the grass back and forth, back and forth. One of the gentlemen that was there, older gentleman was there, came by and had a fit. He went running out to one of the elders and told the elder what was going on. The preacher was down there cutting grass on Sunday. And how dare he do this, especially since we've got a revival coming up here shortly. What if somebody comes by and sees him working on the Sabbath? Now, wait a minute. It's all right for me to go out and drive halfway over the country, over the state of Kentucky, to go visit with all these people and be in their house and not to cut grass. And it finally came down to where it was an understanding, well, if there's a way to not cut grass on Sunday, don't cut the grass on Sunday. But if you have to, you have to. And again, it was just a mix of the people as to what they had been brought up on and to what they believed. And to be real honest, the same still remains true in churches even yet today. Do you celebrate the Sabbath? Yeah. Do you celebrate the Sabbath and take your day of rest? But wait, the Sabbath begins when?
Friday night at sundown.
So Saturday is actually your day of rest. It's not Sunday. Oh, but now wait a minute, preacher, you don't understand. I got all these things I got to get done on Saturday. I don't have any other day to do them. Sunday, rest Saturday and start your week off with getting things done. And people still don't understand the true meaning of what we're supposed to have as the day of rest given to us from God. So.
You know, we do need a day off to hit the reset button, to attend church and spend time with the people that we love, because of course we do. You know, we need that. But none of that compares to God's primary intention behind that commandment. Of course, then we have our first question there, but I think we pretty much have addressed that because of the scripture that I read. Basically, it's the commandment that tells us that. You know, God rescued the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, and He guided them into the wilderness, of course, under the leadership of Moses. But the miracles that occurred, which were also known as the plagues, they actually convinced Pharaoh that he did need to let the Jews go, and that God was actually the one that was in charge. But then he changed his mind, of course, and sent his army out after them after they had already left. Well, when they got to the edge of the Red Sea, God performed another miracle. And they were able to, of course, go across the Red Sea on dry land. And once they got completely across, of course, here comes Pharaoh's army, and they're going to go in and just capture the Israelites and bring them back again. Well, the only problem was they didn't understand that God was still in control. And what happened to them? Of course, the wall of water on either side just crashed down upon them. And that ensured Israel's future freedom from the Egyptians, because they no longer had an army to go after them. They all drowned in the Red Sea. But God told the Israelites that He was going to give them a land that was a promised land that was flowing with milk and honey, right? But they didn't know that they were going to have to walk so far to get there. They spent 40 years wandering around out in the desert before they actually got there. But they didn't have any shade. They didn't have a food supply. And they had very little water. But what happened then? They started complaining about that. What happened? God provided for them. He provided them with water. He provided them with food. They had the manna that would be there every morning. And on Fridays, there would be enough manna for them to have some for the next day, and it wouldn't spoil. So that's the other thing, is that that's the only time that it wouldn't spoil, was on Friday when they would gather it. So they'd gather enough for both days.
Yeah, but where's the meat?
Yeah, then they started complaining about that. And of course, what did God do?
Quail.
He gave them quail. So they had meat to be able to eat.
I never understood that, because they were herding a lot of goats and sheep and cattle, and, they ate those. I mean, that's meat. So I couldn't.
Yeah, but I think they would have ran through their supply real
Probably
quick.
pretty quick, yeah, but still.
And they were going to need, I guess, seed cattle and seed
Yeah.
sheep and
But
goats and all.
this is 6 million people that complained about everything and didn't want to wait on anything. They wanted everything right
Absolutely.
now. I'm surprised that they were under that much self-control that they didn't do that.
Okay, and how did they know where they were supposed to be going? What did God give them?
Smoke by day and a pillar of fire at night.
All right, cloud by day, pillar of fire by night, so they knew which way to go. That would be pretty impressive, wouldn't it?
Maybe some of the reason they didn't eat those animals,
Yeah.
because they were providing other stuff for them. Like sheep were providing the wool
Right.
and the milk,
Milk,
stuff like that. So
milk.
Good smell.
maybe they didn't want to really take that reserve.
Of course, I don't know that they would have had cattle then.
Well, I don't know if they'd have cattle, but
Steers.
They would not have been able to survive in the desert, I don't think.
Steers, and it's hard to get milk out of steers.
Steer. That's true.
I mean, goat milk.
That's true.
yeah, goat milk, yeah, they had goat milk and sheep stuff.
But what were they looking at whenever they got to the promised land, though? What was on the other side? There were different kings and armies and different things like that they were going to have to deal with. And, of course, a lot more impossible things. And, of course, God was always there for them. But back when they were standing on the edge of the wilderness, you think maybe they were worried about how they were going to be able to survive now that they had left Egypt, where their homes were and they had food and all of that? They didn't know at that point that God was going to be able to provide for them.
I think it's just the history of people is that, they weren't satisfied, or, they didn't trust after a while what God was providing. They took miracles for granted. The same thing happened with Jesus, with the miracles and the things when the people weren't satisfied with it, they abandoned them, and it's the same today. People aren't satisfied just with what Christ has done for us. They wanted to go their own way.
It'd be tough if, like, we all lost our homes and meandering around out there without food in our cabinets and stuff like that. It would be tough, but you do.
I don't know, I
But-
think
I
that
don't know.
pillar of fire and
Yeah,
that
I
that
think
cloud would keep my attention.
I think that would have got my attention too.
Yeah,
I think those high waters being separated and being able to travel through.
Yeah, there's,
On dry land
I
though.
didn't
that's-
have to
Come up
down
with a pretty
with
good
that.
persuasive argument as to why to trust God.
Yeah.
But I talked to somebody just this last week who said, you know, I've lost everything. I always thought I couldn't lose all these things that we had. Lost everything. It's nice not to have anything to have to worry about anymore. And you know, there's a lot of wisdom in that thought
Yeah.
right there.
And stress out over it.
Just like me, help me with this shed ordeal, you know, it's, I would, Lord willing, somebody come in and take all that stuff out of that garage and that shed. But
Just leave the important stuff.
it's just hard to imagine to let go of it, but we can't.
Yes, absolutely. But something that we don't think about a lot of times though is this. What about their sandals and their clothing?
Didn't wear out.
It never wore out. Can you imagine that? 40 years worth of it and it never wore out.
Style never changed, I guess, unfortunately.
Well, out in the desert.
Out in the desert, I mean,
Yeah.
you won't be looking for style, you'll be looking for something to keep you from the sun. But, you know, God delivered kings and kingdoms into their hands without even requiring them to lift a sword. And they could not have known at that time what they soon became to know or came to know, that God's provision for us, including His rest, is an overflow of His presence. And we just need to trust Him. Okay, that brings us to question number 2. What promise did God make to His chosen people in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2?
He would always be with them.
That's exactly right. He'd always be with them. But not only that, that He was going to protect them no matter what the circumstances would come about. He'd be with them and He was going to protect them. Okay, and then question number 3, how does the wording of this verse relate to Exodus chapter 14, verses 26 through 31, and then Joshua chapter 3, verses 14 through 17, and then Daniel chapter 3, verses 1 through 28.
I put the water stopped flowing when people crossed, and they crossed on dry land in Exodus and Joshua, and in Daniel the 3 men were saved from the fire.
Okay?
Which is what Isaiah said, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, nor shall the flames scorch you, for I am the Lord your God.
God keeps His promises of safety, of guidance for them, guidance for us. But He also keeps His promise of discipline. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, I won't fall against the wrath of God.
Exactly. It's the carrot and stick thing. You know, the carrot is God's going to be there for us. He's going to protect His chosen people. But that is based on what? That we obey Him and that we keep His commandments and we stay within His will. Because if we don't, boy, it's rough when that stick starts coming down. It's like the days of growing up. It was a rough thing when that switch started coming around and whacking on your legs when you didn't obey what you were supposed to obey.
Or if you ever heard a belt slipping through the belt loop.
Oh yeah, that's a very distinct sound. A leather belt clearing 6 belt loops. You know, it just, you heard that sound, you knew immediately, or you hoped that that was happening for somebody else, one of your brothers, instead of you, but invariably it was you.
definite sound of that belt hitting your behind part too.
Now, one of the other things I think it shows is that it's a physical confrontation against somebody you could sort of, match up against or whatever. But the power of nature, God is controlling it. Here's God is telling them, not only do I have power over kings and whatever, but I also have power over nature that you won't be harmed.
Exactly. And after seeing that display of his power, why in the world would you want to disobey him? But that was a repeating cycle.
Same thing over and over.
Okay, and question number 4. The one who made the wilderness was the one leading the Israelites through it. How does meditating on God as the creator change the way you look at impossible things?
According to Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and I wrote nothing is impossible when you put your trust in God.
Very good answer.
Key there is the impossible, or impossible. What we see as impossible, God says,
Yeah. That's what you want to do? It's done. But to us, it is truly something that's impossible.
try creating a fish.
Creation is the whole key.
And it was spoken into being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course,
Didn't have to do
spoken.
it- He didn't do labor, he
No, he
spoke
spoke
it.
it into being. So if he really put his mind to something physical, what could he do?
Well, until he made man. With man, he formed, he
Yeah.
formed, so.
Rick? I
Yes,
think,
Lee.
And I agree with that, where she said Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But I think sometimes we put limitations on ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there are many times that I look to myself and I say, who in the world do you think you are up there leading that Bible study? But God can take, mere rambling, stumbling, stuttering, whatever, and turn it into something good. So we need to be a vehicle for God to use. And when He tells us we need to be doing something, we need to be doing it. Because if we don't, we won't enjoy the rewards that He has in store for us.
Well, I preceded my answer with this thought. When we place ourselves in His hands, it's then that all things become possible, the impossible becomes possible. But I think there are a lot of people in the world today who still don't get the idea that you've got to be, as you said just a few moments ago, following the will of God, obedient to the will of God. You've got to be in the will of God. In other words, you've got to be being guided by His handiwork for the things yet to come, so that what is impossible can become possible. And there are a lot of people today who just simply, they're out here singing Frank Sinatra and Elvis Presley, I did it my way. So, and don't understand why they can't get there.
I have a story I'll try to shorten of where I really, 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 really trusted God to get to help with this situation I got myself in. And it was back in early 2000s after 911 incident. I'll just give a little backdrop. That really got my attention, and I started taking my 3-year-old to church, and it took me a whole year to read the Bible, and was trying to witness to my husband, and finally told me to stop. And I just got very, very, very close rapport with Jesus. And anyways, I had 3 beagles, and they occasionally would get loose. And then it was a horrible, horrible, horrible evening because my husband would insist we would have to search for them, and they would never come back. They would in the morning, but while we were looking and searching for them, it was just a miserable, miserable evening. Well, I had 3 beagles, and Wilma got away. and my husband was due home soon. And I said, I just looked up, I said, what do I do? What? Oh my gosh, this evening is ruined, and what do I do? And clear as I'm speaking to you, I was told to not tell him, don't tell him. I said, what do you mean don't tell him? That was so against my nature. It would have been the first thing you get home, like, Wilma's missing, I'm so sorry, and blah, blah, blah. He's like, don't tell him. I'm like, okay, but I don't think that's a good idea. So he gets home, and also I have to explain, our dogs lived out in a very deluxe dog run. That's another story, but, so, and they would usually come in the evenings, not always. Anyways, he comes home, we have dinner, he reads the paper, watches TV, not that he would normally ask about the dogs or even check on them, but I had, was my little boy born? Yes, my little boy was, yes. Donnie was too little to know that a dog was missing, and I was trying to keep my composure. So every chance I had, I would go outside and I'd be like, well, but we had 60 acres of woods behind it. Anyways, every chance I had, I'd be like, Wilma, kid boy, like, where are you? No Wilma, and I took care of the boys and let them out to the bathroom and gave them some attention. And anyways, nighttime came, and I'm still talking to God like, please bring Wilma home, and this is really, really hard for me not to tell my husband that one of our dogs was missing. But somehow I fell asleep, and in the middle of the night, it was like around 2 in the morning, it's clear again as I'm talking to you guys, get up, she's home now. And I knew without a doubt, when I walked to the back door, she would be there, and sure enough, she was there. And I walked her out to the dog run, to the sleep. Oh, no, and then I just said, thank you.
They are.
But that might not seem like a big deal, but that was really, really hard for me.
We have to trust that voice. Trust that voice when it comes to us. Okay, we had a number of different characters in our episode that were participating in Shabbat. And of course there was Mary Magdalene, and she had, of course, experienced Jesus' rescuing power in her life. But because she was freed from those demons, didn't automatically remove her difficult circumstances. She still had, of course, a lot of painful memories, and she had relationships that were strained or maybe even broken, and consequences from her life that had gone very badly. But most importantly, who did she have? Jesus. So that is why she became one of his devoted followers. She exchanged the roof over her head for a tent and familiarity with a whole new kind of wilderness wandering. She had found out that the only true rest comes from communing with her Creator. And she wasn't about to lose his presence for anything. Of course, then there was Nicodemus. Nicodemus had built a pretty decent life for himself. He had good behavior, he had success, he had money, and he had the power to be able to make his life easier. But that didn't necessarily satisfy his soul. Nicodemus had questions, didn't he? He was trying to find answers. And a works-based religion is not going to get us there. And that's what Nicodemus had, was a works-based religion. I mean, he observed the Sabbath and all of that, but they were mostly ritualistic. And I think we saw that from the gathering that happened. And I think there's a few subtle things that were there that should tip us off of that. Did you notice how his wife was bragging about all of the dishes and how beautiful they were and how expensive they were? And then the couple that came to the door, and he tells her as they're walking away from the door, make sure and get us a place up close to the head of the table. Wanted to be important, wanted to be close to Nicodemus. So that was a very ritualistic one. Now, but what about Matthew? Sorry about that. Fix that so it won't make noise again. That's my sugar level alert. But anyway, Matthew, he benefited from the Roman occupation. Matthew had a pretty good life for himself, didn't he? But he had a relationship issue. He really had no one except his dog. He even tried to go to his parents' house to be able to celebrate the Sabbath or have the Sabbath meal with his family. He got to the door and he saw his sister, he saw his mother, and then he saw his father. And then we remember what he had said earlier about his father. His father said, what?
I have no son.
I have no son. Because he had aligned himself with the Romans. And so he left without ever going inside to share in the Sabbath meal. But then we have Simon. What did Simon have going on?
Easier way to pay his taxes.
Easier way to pay his taxes. And how was he going to accomplish that?
Ratting out his friends.
Yeah.
Ratting out his friends, his fellow Jew. So, we have all of those different ones that were going to participate in the Sabbath. But
When we're talking Sabbath, we're talking really, isn't this really the Passover dinner that we're talking about?
No,
No,
the
it's-
Passover was
it's
separate.
strictly the Sabbath?
just with the Sabbath.
I didn't think they did, I didn't think on every Sabbath they did that type of a meal.
That's what I was wondering,
Yeah,
pretty well.
They do that every
Yeah.
week.
Every
well,
week,
you
yeah.
remember Mary said that she had the extra seat at her table.
Yeah.
But that wasn't for the Sabbath. That was for the Passover.
Passover.
Right.
Yeah.
Was when the extra seat was supposed to be set.
They corrected
They
her.
corrected her
Mm.
and told her that. But out of all of those, what was the one that gives us the example that we should follow? We had the one where at Mary's house where people showed up off of the street. And what happened? She welcomed them in. The one that Nicodemus had, that was by invitation only. So the question then becomes question number 5. When it comes to practicing your own Sabbath day rest, which character do you relate to the most and why?
I was honest and I said Nicodemus is the one that I relate to the most. Because I do whatever needs to be done regardless of the time or the day. I try to keep everything there. And sometimes I go too far.
Anyone
That's-
else?
That's the honest side of it.
I think we all have
I
a
don't-
mixture of every one. I think I can relate to every one of them. I mean, I answered that to Andrew, as we go to church and worship, go out to eat, and then usually rest the rest of the day. I usually try hard to get my rest on Sunday afternoon. But there's other days where, like you said, you have to cut grass, you have to do something, so then
Ricky and I don't rest though on Sunday afternoon.
yeah.
We're busy working, checking our inside of our eyelids for
Yeah.
cracks
For
and breaks.
pinholes,
I
yeah.
know.
Exactly. Anyone else?
I say with Pat, it would be Mary because, and I'm talking more back in New York, because our house was like where everybody just sort of showed up and ate, and there was always, we always had food or cakes or coffee, so it was always that type of, for years, it was a gathering. I would still do, but not today. No.
We used to do that when Mother was alive. We
Yeah.
always went to her house and gathered together and all that. But, not anymore. Everybody does their own thing on Sundays.
Yes.
I don't know what character I could identify with, but I had a nursing career where I had to work Sundays. We had to work like every other weekend. How do you think God feels about that? I mean, I was having a household.
Well, I think that's,
Yeah.
a lot of times is a reality of our lives today, because you have to go where the work is, and sometimes your job may require that. But there are other opportunities that you have to be able to worship besides just Sunday. And there are other opportunities.
Kind of like even in the Jewish law, that, you had a donkey get stuck in the ditch, then, it was okay to bring him out, or something falls down the well, it was okay to bring him out. And as a nurse, people don't stop being sick just because it's Sunday, and they need to be cared for. And I've always viewed my nursing as my ministry to people. So, and to my patients, and to the doctors and the other people that I work with. So that's how I guess, rationalized it for when I had to work Sundays. So.
Anyone else? Okay, the next question that we had there was, Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." How would meditating on God have impacted Mary's healing process?
Well, I answer for all of them, for Nicodemus, Mary, Matthew, Simon. Allowing God to keep everything in His time, following Him, obeying Him, then allows God to fulfill His order or His plan, rather than focusing upon what we have.
Absolutely.
That
And
summarizes it, yeah.
did you see how Mary reacted when she answered the door and Jesus was standing there?
She didn't even know his name.
I know. Didn't know his name.
He was speechless again.
Speechless, absolutely she was. But I would say that she welcomed him in, but he had to actually say, "Can I come in?" And understandably so, because she was just in awe.
Fulfillment of Scripture, Revelation 3:20, I stand at the door and knock.
Yep.
And he who invites me in, I will come in and have supper with him.
And of course he said, "May I come in?"
Yeah.
Well, Nicodemus, I think he should, by contemplating about God, I think he, not just thinking about Him, he needed to seek God more. I mean, he was schooled in the Scriptures and everything, and the ritualistic and all of that, but Lee, I like the comment that you made last night about Nicodemus, that every once in a while you can see sort of like the light bulbs going off, and he's sort of a likable person because, you think that he's beginning to recognize, what is truly going on, but then all of a sudden, boom, he's back to his old self again.
It's almost like Adam and Eve, because his wife kept changing his mind on things. Kind of like Eve did that.
Well, remember, it's easy to look back on the Israelite people and in the wilderness and say, how can you be so blind? And to the Nicodemus and those, but, we face the same things. The people in Israel, they figured that there was like 6 million people of the Israelites, with women and children and everybody traveling through the desert. How many of those people do you think actually ever really got close to Moses? Or to Aaron? 6 million people. and how far they were spread out, and how many actually saw, I mean, they saw the water on the sides of them when they went through when they went through the Red Sea, but, they're hearing other people complaining. You know how easy it is to get wrapped up in complaining?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like Nicodemus, he was raised in a culture, and the culture had expectations of what the priest and what the leadership was supposed to be. So he had this, I'm sure he had this tugging of his heart, and that's what we see. He's looking and he's feeling something, but yet he's still being pulled back in everything that he's grown up in and know. And we do the same thing. I mean, look at the culture we live in and how we're pulled and tugged in so many directions, and a lot of times not towards God, even though that's what we want to do. It's easy to be pulled away.
Absolutely. It's amazing how it feeds on itself when people start complaining. And maybe they weren't going to voice anything to begin with, but as one person complains and the other one starts complaining, they all start piling on.
Because if we were any different, we would have learned from all these people, all this history, and we're still making the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again, so.
Not to bring up a sore subject, but that's why they need to teach history in our schools.
That's right.
Never mind, we won't go there.
It's even more amazing when you think of 6 million people, the water being open to 6 million
For
people.
6 million
That's
people.
even more.
It
6,000
wasn't a
would have been
10-minute trip.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it took more than just half an hour for them to get through there.
Oh,
It
man.
took a while.
Although it wouldn't have taken me long, I'd seen that water pile up, I'd have went to running.
Quick before it comes
Yeah,
back.
it's
With
gonna
your
be
bad
great
knee and
with
everything, huh?
Bad knee, fall in the mud, get up and go again.
The thing with Nicodemus and with us, if you're like Nicodemus, obviously was a student, of the Old Testament, whatever the writings he had, and when you're convicted, when you're doing wrong. Nicodemus probably knew he really wasn't living the life or the thing he was supposed to be doing. And when God convicts you, then you start searching even more.
Well, look, and they were living in a time, I mean, we're looking back on time now and seeing Jesus and seeing what we have written down, the miracles
Right.
and all this stuff. They were going through this blindly, through this time period, and so, lots of men had claimed to be the
Right,
Messiah,
right.
and all turned out to be fake. So I've been skeptical. I have to be honest. I would have been skeptical if I'd known all these others, that, you hadn't heard from God in 400 years. I mean,
Right.
nobody's really, no prophets, no nothing, no word coming, and now all of a sudden you have somebody that's saying, that they're saying, other people are saying that he's Messiah. He hasn't really said at this point.
Well,
So,
in that period, also, was talking about that 400-year period, Nicodemus talked a little bit about that when he was talking about the tapestry that was hanging on the wall there,
Yeah.
about that period of time, the Maccabees and all that, so
But
he's
you
sort of
know-
hinted to that. Yes,
The other
Lee.
thing that we have from Scripture about Nicodemus, of course, is his meeting Jesus. And then after the crucifixion, he and Joseph of Arimathea putting him in the tomb. And sometimes, you kind of wonder, he was one of the only Sanhedrin that went to Jesus and talked to him. It stops right there after, Jesus tells him, you must be born again. What else passed between them as far as conversation went? Did Nicodemus ever become a follower? It's something that you wonder about. Makes you sit there and go,
Yeah.
Things that make you go,
yeah.
well,
Yeah,
Scripture
that's
says
one
that
of
there were some followers within the leadership and the Sanhedrin, but they were terrified, really, because remember, it was a time where if you said that you believed that he was the Messiah, or that you believed who he was, you were no longer allowed into the temple. And I mean, that was,
Well, he
that's
would have
like
been
saying
ostracized.
you can't have access to God anymore. So that was,
That was their
You
life.
talking about
Temple
church
was- that was their life,
discipline.
really.
I mean, that was their church discipline. You couldn't come into the synagogues or the, so, yeah, they were frightened.
Not to be a spoiler or anything, but we're going to see that whole issue addressed a little farther as we go along in this series.
Oh, really? How was?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it gets real good as we go forward with this. It truly does. But you know, keeping the Sabbath was marked by not working in those days. But God's primary intention behind the commandment is to spend the day like Mary Magdalene did, to enter into His presence. What needs to change in your schedule or in your mindset to rest the way that God intended for us? I'll throw mine out there. I said that I get caught up so much in the prep on Sunday mornings for the building, security, you know, just making sure everything's ready, you know, that kind of thing, that sometimes it's difficult for me to stop that and get my mind set for worship when the worship service begins. And I need to get better at that.
I'll kind of come along right beside you, but I'm much worse than what you are. Because mine starts on Sunday and doesn't end until the following Saturday night. Through that whole time, I answered it and I said, we need to become less selfish and less impatient and keep God number one in everything, not number two. And the problem is sometimes, and I'm guilty of it, Teresa can tell you all the horror stories, but trying to set on Saturday night saying, oh shoot, did I get that done? I can't remember, did I finish? Did I get Lee's lessons run off? Did I get my lessons run off? Is my sermon actually going to get there, or am I missing it? Scrap that sermon, let's start all over again. Because I get more concerned in me than I do in God. And then sometimes, like a few weeks ago, when I did scrap the sermon, came in and shared what God had shared with me that night, people came up and they kept saying, that was one of the best sermons I've heard you preach in a long time. Well, thank you. You do better.
So you're gonna wing them all now, huh?
Well, that's when you step back and you say, thank you, God.
Yeah.
Thank you, God.
Yeah,
Because
keeping
you
him
were
number
telling
one.
me what I needed to do.
Yeah, keeping him number one instead of putting him, saying he's number one, and putting him in number two place. Focusing more on me and selfishness and impatience that I have. So I think that we're all guilty of that. Only some, maybe Sunday, the rest of us, Sunday through Saturday. And that's a good thing. It's only 1 week at a time. Doesn't mount up.
Okay, sort of to wrap this up, I think we're going to jump over question 8. I think that's something that we can, each of it could answer to ourselves. But question number 9, I think is important. Fill in the blank. God is with me in blank.
All everything.
John, all circumstances? Pretty much what everybody was saying. He's with us in all things. And no matter what the situation or circumstance is, He's there. We just need to sometimes slow down and listen. The Scriptures tell us that. Be still and know that I am God. Sometimes it's very difficult to do that, though. We want to just rush in and start doing things. Sometimes we need to take a second, call a timeout.
I always had a problem, especially when I was younger, is feeling a little bit healthy and feeling you could do stuff. And God, there's people out there that really need your help. So I could do this on my own. I got this. And that was my big problem all the time. I could do it, and then,
Famous last words, right?
You get smacked down. But
It's sort of like that statement, hey, y'all, watch this.
Yeah. But it's
That's
more, but
last-
it's also because you think, because not just that, but you know there are people that are struggling that need more help than you do. So I think it's all,
They don't
it's
want to
a,
bother him.
Yeah, no,
Somebody
yeah.
else is more important. Yeah, that's.
yeah. I think that's a lot of people, I think that fall into that.
And then question number 10 says, you reread several scriptures there, and then it asks the question, which of these verses bring you feelings of rest, peace, and hope, and why? Lee?
Well, I said Romans 5:8, and the reason I said that was because Matthew and Luke don't apply, because I don't have that much here to begin with. But it's because of Romans 5:8 and my acceptance of Christ as Lord and Savior that Revelation 21:4 is made possible.
See, I just cut to the chase. I just addressed Revelation 21:4 because it gives us the glimpse and the fulfillment both of what eternity is going to be. Everybody wants to know what's going to be in the end time, in the end when Jesus does come back. Well, 21:4 tells you this is what it's going to be. Take rest. In other words, that rest, peace, and that hope.
Me and Pat both put Revelation 20, but my thing was just the picture of God personally wiping away your tears,
Yeah.
And it was to me, it was God personally doing something physically to that's sort of how I look.
Well, I'll add to it too what Revelation 21:4 says there at the very end. Because the old order of things has passed away. Man, I'm ready for this to be over with. Let's move on to glory and get done with this old order of things happening as it is.
Is there a particular scene out of the episode that really was something special, something special to you? Or just stood out to you?
First of all, would be Mary's Shabbat dinner, how special all that was, breathtaking to her. And she tried so hard.
I thought it was the first one, when he calls her by name, I thought that was the one that stuck out to me, where that's what we all want to hear.
What stuck out to me was at the dinner, at the Shabbat dinner, and Jesus turned it over to her
Tony?
and
Yes.
said, this is your house, you lead this. And that was so far away from what tradition
Oh, yes.
and what society
Would
said.
never,
And he was, he looked again at the individual, not anything.
And I think that showed, or at least from Mary's standpoint, it should have shown that Jesus had trust in the fact that she was healed and that he trusted that to her to do that instead of just taking over and doing it himself.
But, and not only that, but, I mean, here's someone who, I mean, she was taught to read. Her father taught her to read, so she was reading that. She knew a little bit about the tradition. She got the Isaiah part wrong. But he's saying, you got this. You can do this. And as inadequate as we feel oftentimes to really be able to do something, Jesus says, when you're doing it for me, you got this, you can do it.
Just something that sort of stood out to me, I think, was when Matthew was, two things. One was when Matthew was meeting with Quintus. You're going to learn to hate Quintus as we go through this. But anyway, did you notice how the Romans pretty much treated him? I mean, the guard that was there was ready to take a sword and just put an end to Matthew right there on the spot. And Quintus had to say, no. And they were bumping into him and knocking him around. They just didn't treat them as people. I mean, they were animals to them. And the other one was when Matthew was in his booth and he was having to wipe the manure off of him that somebody had thrown in his booth. Probably somebody just passing by just heaved one and went through the cage there and got him. His what is it, protector or whatever that was there was saying, "You stink, why don't you go home?" And he said, "No, I have a job to do."
I felt for Simon's wife when with her dealing with the frustration. She knew what he was doing was wrong, and yet she had no way really to talk him out of it or to control the situation. So.
Of course, what Simon was saying, hey, I got this, right?
That's it,
Right,
yeah.
Sal?
Yeah.
I got this. He didn't.
No.
We will see that as we go forward with this. But anything else?
Well, Lee would know that, I'm just gonna bring this out, because this is, say, 20, but me and my friend would work Saturday, did a lot of side jobs, and one of the towns we'd go through was Oceanside, which had a heavy Jewish population, and even back then, on Saturdays, you'd see the dad walking with just the male children to the temple, you know, and they, no car, no nothing, and so even, you know, in the 90s, say, that tradition of just, this is a man's thing. I don't know, you know, the women, you know, so even back then, it still carried over that tradition that it was a man-ruled thing in the temple. So for Jesus to say something to Mary, that was, you know, something completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus treated everyone different than what
The norm
was the norm.
I was surprised. I had a patient the other day, and I forget what he was raised, but his wife was Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I have to ask you, and I meant it not to criticize or anything, but tell me what you know. I mean, you know, and so I was inquisitive and asking her questions, and she said, I really don't know that much. My brother went off to school, and he went through the bar mitzvah,
Right.
and she said, I don't know. I was never taught that. So here you've got a whole segment of the Jewish population that, unless they had strong male models in their home to, you know, observe the Sabbath and the Passover and all that stuff and the traditions, the women knew very little.
And even in with the siblings, it was always the mother and the son. You know, the son was everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is gonna sound chauvinistic, and I don't mean for it to sound that way. But what the women knew was to follow what the male dominant leader in the household said. That's what they knew.
Could you, I couldn't hear you. No, I'm serious, I couldn't hear you.
I said that the women knew to follow the male dominant leader of the Jewish religion in the household. That's what they knew. And that's not being chauvinistic or
Right.
putting women in a certain place.
Right.
That's just saying this was the history, this
Oh,
was
yeah.
the
The
tradition.
culture.
Yeah, that
And
was the
still
culture.
today is.
Jewish had kind of an odd, the mothers was put on a very high pedestal. You know, the mother was
Yeah.
was the princess and was very
Yeah.
taken care of. So the women were very taken care of and very respected in that instance, but yet it was still a very male
Right.
dominant, especially when it came to the religion and to the rules and that type of thing.
Right.
So.
And you don't find Jewish women today in a household. You don't find Jewish women taking over and going through the house, even if there's a divorce circumstance or the husband has passed on or whatever it may be. Oftentimes the women will revert back to a rabbi or to the priest or whoever
Or
it
to
is
the
that they
oldest
have.
son,
Yeah.
eldest son.
And well, if they have.
Yeah, if they have a son, yeah, if they have a.
But if not, they have to go outside of the family to get someone else to be able to come in and mandate. The mother can't just take over and the women can't just rule. It's not that way.
Okay, in closing here, we need to remember, and they say this repeatedly, is we need to understand that this series is theater. And what they tell us is that that is theater, but the Bible teaches. And they always refer back to the Bible, and that's why we come back. We talk about the series, but then we also address the Scriptures and what the Scriptures actually mean.
You mean everything we're seeing in the video is not real?
Real, and of course they take a few hits on that, but it's funny because they on their Facebook page they will actually show some of the comments that come in and where they call them heretics and they, you know, why are you doing this and all, and they basically address it as
I vote we
thank
watch
you for your comments.
I vote we watch the Three Stooges next week then. Mo always taught Larry and Curly and Chimp what they needed to know.
The episode for next week, again, is the Jesus with the children, and it is a fabulous episode. Those of you that haven't seen it, I think you're truly going to enjoy it. Shows him interacting with the children, and it is a very, very good one. What else? There was something else I wanted to mention. Oh, Teresa, the shirt that you have there. Show everyone that. Okay, you remember what Mary told Nicodemus? I was one way,
Right.
and now I am different.
Yeah,
Completely.
And the thing that happened in between was him.
yeah, that's a good one.
That's definitely a
Yeah.
quote.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Did you buy that online?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
And that
one.
one he's got on, and the hat.
This one I've
and
got
face
on, the
mask.
hat,
At their,
the book.
The chosen gift, chosengifts.com or?
TheChosenGifts.com.
okay.
And if you have the app, you can go direct to it from the app. And of course, the face mask, Binge Jesus.
And there are t-shirts and sweatshirts
Wow.
and
They got a little bit of everything. I'm not pushing that, but
all that.
anything that you buy, any profit that comes out of that goes towards funding the series and to making it available throughout the entire world. And that's the whole thing, is to make it available throughout the world. And you'll see pictures of them sharing it in places like, in fact, Dallas shared that last night. The app that's out there called LinkedIn has just been kicked out of, or not kicked out, but they have left China. And they're one of the many corporations that have left China. But you know what? This app where people can watch this series is available in China. And they're trying to reach the entire world. They have pictures of people in Africa with different, they'll be sitting there, a whole group of people will be watching it being projected up onto a wall or a screen
How many
or something
million
like
viewers
that.
do they have now? I forgot. There's several million that they've got.
I can give you the current number.
Was the number stop rolling?
And closing prayer while you're doing it.
Yes. Somebody want to close us out in prayer as we're waiting for this to come up? Well, let me give you the number. 297 million views of this series across the world.
That's awesome.
They're reaching people that have not been reached before with the gospel message. And I think that's fabulous. But there again, they keep reminding everyone, this is theater, the Bible teaches. Okay, someone want to close this
Charlie
out? in prayer?
Heston didn't know Moses either, so, you know.
Someone coming down the mountain.
Anyone want to close out? Thank you, Mike.
Heavenly Father, again, it's been good to be in your house and discuss your word. Help each of us to get in a rhythm of Sabbath, a rhythm of rest, where we spend time with you and you spend time with us. Be with us as we go our separate ways, that somebody could possibly see Christ in us. We could share him with somebody through your scripture, through our actions, and through our reactions. We thank you for loving us, and we pray all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Don't forget to stop